Serbia country in the West Central Balkans. For most of the 20th century, it was a part of Yugoslavia. Serbia. The capital of Serbia is Belgrade, a cosmopolitan city at the confluence of the Danube and Sava rivers. Stari Grad. Belgrade's old town is dominated by an ancient fortress called the Kalemegdan and includes well-preserved examples of medieval architecture and some of Eastern Europe's most renowned restaurants. Serbia's second city, Novi Sad, lies upstream on the Danube, a cultural and educational center. It resembles the university towns of nearby Hungary in many respects. Beginning in the 1920s, Serbia was an integral part of Yugoslavia, meaning land of the South Slavs, which included the modern countries of Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, North Macedonia, and Montenegro. Long ruled in turn by the Ottoman Empire and Austria-Hungary, these component nations combined in 1918 to form an independent federation known as the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. Land bounding the country to the west are the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Slavonian region of the Republic of Croatia. Serbia adjoins Hungary to the north, Romania and Bulgaria to the east, North Macedonia to the south, and Montenegro to the southwest. Kosovo, which Serbia does not recognize as an independent country, lies to the south as well along the northeastern border of Albania. Plant and animal life. The vegetation of Serbia forms a transition between Central European and Mediterranean types. Before Austrian agricultural colonization began in the 18th century, the dry Vojvodina plains were a grassland steppe. However, it is evident that forests at one time dominated the region. Only about 5% of the area is now covered by trees, mostly in the higher parts of the Fruška Gora and in wetlands adjacent to the Danube and Sava. Up to 1/3 of Serbia proper is in broad-leaved forest, mostly oak and beech. The regional name Sumedija literally means forested area, but large areas that were formerly wooded long have been cleared and put to cultivation. People of Serbia. Most of the population of Serbia and neighboring Montenegro is of South Slavic origin. Slavic tribes entered the region from the north during the 5th to 7th century CE, encountering Illyrian-speaking peoples. Although the Slavs acculturated large numbers of Illyrians, many of the latter retained their distinctive language and customs in the complex hills and valleys of present-day Albania. Cleavages between southern Slav tribes developed over time, particularly after the establishment in the 4th century CE of the north-south Theodosian line demarcating the eastern and western segments of the Roman Empire. Organization of the Christian Church subsequently was based on this division. Ethnic groups. The early Serbian homeland was in the vicinity of Serbia's Kopanic Mountains, including the Kosovo Basin and the region around the ancient capital of Ras. After Ottoman armies overran this region in the 14th century, many Serb families fled the southern basins and found shelter northward in the hills of Sumedija. Albanian tribal groups then moved into former Serbian settlements. More than 4/5 of the population of Serbia identifies itself as Serb. The principal minorities are Hungarians and Bosniaks. Roma make up a small but distinctive group. Other minorities include Croats, Montenegrins, Bulgarians, and Romanians. Languages. Unlike Romanians or Hungarians, Serbs do not have a distinct language to set them apart from their neighbors. They speak essentially the same language as Croats, Bosniaks, and Montenegrins, although some pronunciation and vocabulary are distinctive. This language, linguistically termed Serbo-Croatian, is now identified as Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, or Montenegrin, depending on the ethnicity of the speaker. It is in its written form that Serbian differs from Bosnian and Croatian. Religion. The distinguishing feature of Serbian national identity is its Eastern Orthodox Christian heritage, though probably less than 1/10 of the population actually attended church during the communist era. Throughout history, the autocephalous Serbian Orthodox Church has viewed itself as the champion of Serbian national interests. During the Ottoman period, it waged a long struggle against the influence of Greek clergy based in Constantinople. Economy of Serbia. In 1945, Yugoslavia adopted a socialist economic system modeled on institutions in the Soviet Union, but following its break with the Communist Information Bureau in 1948, a system evolved that allowed increasing opportunity for individual enterprise. Most farmers were gathered into collective farms until this unpopular policy was abandoned after 1953. In Serbia, the institution continued mainly in former German estates in the Vojvodina, where the regime had resettled migrants from mountainous regions of Serbia and Montenegro. Agriculture and forestry. Agriculture has long been the mainstay of Serbia's economy. Although fewer than 1/4 of economically active Serbs are now employed in farming, cropland occupies nearly 2/3 of Serbia's territory. The principal area of commercial agriculture is the Vojvodina region and adjacent lowlands south of the Sava and Danube rivers, including the valley of the north-flowing Morava River. 3/4 of sown crops in Serbia are grains. Corn predominates, occupying some 1/3 of the cropland, and wheat is next in importance. Other noteworthy crops are sugar beets, sunflowers, potatoes, oilseeds, hemp, and flax. Fruits and vegetables are also cultivated. Transportation. Although Serbia has been a crossroads since it was traversed by Europe's prehistoric amber routes between Central Europe and the Mediterranean, it has lagged behind other parts of the continent in developing its transportation infrastructure. Part of the difficulty in building such networks lies in Serbia's mountainous terrain and the limited commercial production that would generate the traffic necessary to justify investment in roads and railroads. After World War II, the need to accommodate international freight traffic along the historic Vardar-Morava corridor with connections to Austria and Hungary prompted construction of modern highways. Health and welfare. Interwar Yugoslavia was noted for the endemic presence of malaria, typhus, typhoid, syphilis, dysentery, and trachoma. By the 1980s, however, these scourges had been reduced to individual cases. Still, Serbia suffers from significant health problems. Even before the civil unrest of the 1990s, infant mortality was fairly high, especially in Kosovo. Only in the Vojvodina region did health standards approach those of Central and Western Europe. Despite marked improvements in medical services, the country's population suffers from crowded housing conditions, poor nutrition, and lack of sanitary services. Education. 8 years of primary education are compulsory in Serbia beginning at age 7. 4 years of secondary education also are available, divided between 2 types of schools: general secondary schools, which prepare students for universities, and vocational schools, which offer training that usually leads to admission to 2-year technical colleges. There are several universities. The largest is the University of Belgrade, founded in 1863. The communist regime of Yugoslavia made great strides toward eliminating illiteracy. In 1921, about 2/3 of Serbs and Montenegrins and 9/10 of the country's Albanians could not read or write. Cultural life. Traditional Serbian society as a strong peasant patriarchal tradition that evolved under Ottoman domination and is still reflected in family and government structures. A distinctive feature is the Zadruga, a corporate family group of 100 or more individuals that originally worked the land under the direction of family elders. The Zadruga functioned as a rural tradition well into the communist era. The advent of modern public services, however, took a toll on this system. Even as elders lived increasingly longer, younger adults educated in an expanding school system chafed at patriarchal authority. By the 1970s, the Zadruga system had evolved into a less onerous system of cooperative extended family groups. Nevertheless, family loyalties continue to play a major role in Serbia, where nepotism in the workplace is a recurring phenomenon.